This is a Shiur in the inyan of dir betachtonim. Kemuvan, this sugya of dir betachtonim, as it's explained in Chassidus and especially in the Taaoha of the Rebbe, is aruka me'eretz mido rechava min hayam. There is many details, and each detail is kavei bracha la'atzmai, and deserves a shiur unto itself. And if one attempted to cover the entire scope of the sugya of dir betachtonim, this would take many hours. And obviously it's not possible to do this in the span of the hour that we have now for this shiur. So we're going to try keep it focused on, I guess, one prat. But this one prat is a prat ikari, and it's one of the, I think, in my opinion, greatest chidushim of the Rebbe, most amazing, mavhildike chidushim of the Rebbe in the sugya of dir betachtonim. And obviously, as the sugya of dir betachtonim is related, very closely related to the sugya of Achdus Hashem, so this is obviously a tremendous chidush in the inyan of Achdus Hashem as well. So we're going to try to stay focused on the purpose of this particular shiur and not get sidetracked into many of the other important details in the sugya of dir betachtonim, which we'll have to leave for another time. It is a tifa inyan, so we have to focus and apply ourselves, and let's get into it. So gor b'pashtus, what's the idea of dir betachtonim? That the Eibishter wants Nisava Kodesh Baruch Hu liyos lo yizbarach dir betachtonim. The Eibishter wants to be living betachtonim. The Eibishter wants to dwell in the lowest possible realm. He wants that the tachtonim should be a keli for elikus. Now, if we think about this, we can ask the simple question, and that is, what's the point? What's the point of the Eibishter dwelling betachtonim? What's the inyan in this? What's the maila baza? What's the maila in having a dir betachtonim? So if we think about this, we can come up l'chayra with two klolistike biurim, two general mahalchim. One is that if the Eibishter is dor betachtonim, and let's say if he's dor betachton shein tachton lamata mimenu, if the Eibishter could be nimshach and found, if the Eibishter could dwell in the lowest place, then this expresses, this highlights and brings out the toikev habligvul of elikus. Because anything which has some kind of a hagbala is obviously going to have a limit how far that could be nimshach. Ad poisavoi v'suloi. It can only come so far, and it cannot go any further. Only that which is betachlis habligvul, has no hagbalas at all, can be nimshach b'chol makom shehu. Has no hagbalas where it can or cannot go, and it can go anywhere. So therefore, what's the idea in dir betachtonim? Why is the Eibishter looking to dwell betachtonim? Why is the Eibishter seeking out to have amshachas elikus in a tachton shein tachton lamata mimenu? It's because that will express the toikev habligvul of elikus. The Eibishter is so bligvul that he's able to be nimshach b'chol makom shehu, anywhere and everywhere, afilu in a tachton shein tachton lamata mimenu. There's no place where he cannot reach. His hamshachas elikus can reach anywhere and everywhere. This is one way to explain the point, the inyan, or the maila, so to speak, in the idea of dir betachtonim. One mahalach. Another mahalach, very different, is to say that dir betachtonim expresses the emeskite of elikus. Meaning that elikus is so emes that everything has to be makir umasig umaskim to this emeskite. And as the Rebbe quotes from the Ralbag, "V'zeh miskulas ha'emes shu maskim la'atzmi mikol tzad." One of the characteristics of emes is that everything around it, mikol tzad, is maskim to the emes. Nothing can contradict or conflict with the emes. Meaning, if the Eibishter would not be found in a tachten shein tachten lamata mimenu, meaning if not for the betachtonim, if there was ilu yitzuyer, there was a tachten in which there was no elikus, that tachten wasn't a keli for elikus, so that tachten wasn't makir in elikus. So that would automatically be a chesaron in the emeskite of elikus. Because there's a place, there's a nakuda, there's a realm which is not aware of the emeskite of elikus. So this is the idea of dir betachtonim. The fact that the Eibishter is dor betachtonim and betachten shein tachten lamata mimenu. What does that mean? That there is no place, there is no nakuda, there is no point, no realm in which they don't recognize the Eibishter. Elikus is so emes, elikus is so real, and so powerful, and so true, that it's impossible for there to be a metzias which is not maskim to this emes. It's impossible for there to be a metzias which is not makir ba'mitosai. So this is different to the first mahalach. In the first mahalach, the hadgosha is in the toikef habligvul of elikus. That the fact that the Eibishter is nimshach, even in a tachten shein tachten lamata mimenu, this expresses the toikef habligvul. How the Eibishter has no hagbolas, he's able to reach even a tachten shein tachten lamata mimenu. Whereas in the second mahalach, we're not focusing on the toikef habligvul, but we're focusing on the amitius of elikus, the emeskite of elikus, which misgula so emes, the characteristic of emes is that everything is makir umaskim to that emes. Ubemela, the inyan of dir betachtonim is the pshat that through the Eibishter being found and nimshach betachtonim and tachtonim being aware of the Eibishter, this brings out the amitius of elikus, that there's no metzias whatsoever which is not maskim and makir his metzias. Everybody knows it and is aware of it and agrees to it. Now, if we think about these two mahalchim, and we ask, my nafkamina, what's the difference? We'll say that the difference is if the emphasis is on the mashpia or on the makabel. That's the difference. In the first mahalach, the emphasis is on the mashpia, meaning we're discussing the toikef habligvul of elikus, and we're saying that here elikus, which is the mashpia, the Eibishter, the reason why he wants to be dor betachtonim is because that will express his toikef habligvul, meaning the koyach of the mashpia. It's all about milamayla lamata. It's all about the Eibishter reaching even the lowest place. So it's not so much, the emphasis here is not on the makabel being a keli. It's not on the kabbalas ha'oyer. Avada, the tachtonim are makabel the oyer. But the point, the bechein, isn't on the kabbalas ha'oyer. The point is to show the bligvul of the mashpia, that the mashpia is able to reach this low. If you have an isha chesed, how does the isha chesed demonstrate the toikef of his chesed? If he's only mashpia chesed to somebody that's close to him, it's nish kempela, not a big deal. That person is close to him and is a keli for the chesed, so it's not a big deal. How does the isha chesed demonstrate the toikef of his chesed, the bligvul of his chesed? If he could give chesed to a tachten, shein tachten lamata mimenu, he can give chesed even to mamish, a person who's not deserving. That will express the toikef habligvul, the toikef hakoyach of his chesed. So it's understood that it's not negeya here in vasfara oifen the makabel chesed is makabel the chesed. The point isn't on the Kabbalah Chesed. The point is, if the Isha Chesed is Mashpia Chesed to a Tachten, Shein Tachten Lamata Mimenu, the Etzem Hashbo, Milamayla Lamato, that's what brings out the Teikef HaBligvul of the Chesed. Derech by the Eibishter. It's not important. The emphasis isn't in the first Mahalach on the Tachten being Mekabel, the Gilui Oyer. The point is the etzem fact that the Eibishter is able to be nimshach in a tachten shetachten lamata mimenu. He could be megale elikusoi. In tachtonim das alein bavaist. This itself is showing on the teikef habligvul of elikus, and the emphasis is on the hashpos elikus as opposed to the kabbalah soyer. But if we think about the second mahalach, in the second mahalach, the emphasis is on the kabbalah soyer. Why? Because what's the second mahalach? That the point of Direi Betachtonim is that this brings out the emeskait of elikus. How? The fact that even a tachten is masig, maskim, and makir b'mitosei. So, what's the emphasis here? The emphasis here is that the tachten has to, mitzad his inyan, mitzad inyonoi, tachten has to be mekabel this gilui elikus and be makir. If the makabel is not makir, it doesn't help that the oy reaches him. The point is that after the oy reaches him, he should grasp it and understand it and say, "Yo, ich ben euch maskim," that the Eibishter is emes. So it's all about the haskama and the hakara of the makabel. So upazeh gufa, it could be in two efanim. When we talk about the haskama and the hakara of the makabel in the emeskait of elikus could be in two ways. One is could be that a taka comes milamayla lamato. Taka comes mitzad the Eibishter's gilui elikus. But then, since the makabel is a keli, so he's able to internalize the gilui milamayla, and once he internalizes it, so b'meila he has the hakara. So maybe he cannot come onto this hakara by himself. Ilule, the fact that the Eibishter revealed himself to the tachten, he would never know of the Eibishter. But once the Eibishter revealed himself to the tachten, and the tachten is able to be masig, this gilui, the tachten can grasp the gilui because he's a keli to the gilui. So now the tachten is mekabelit, and he's mekabelit, he's makir b'mitosei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's maskim la'mitosei, and this accomplishes the inyan of the Betachtonim. So this is one way that it can happen. And there's another way that it can happen, and that is that the tachten mitzad inyonoi milamata l'maylo can come to a hakara. He doesn't even need a gilui milmaylo. The tachten could think about it and ask questions and be chayker v'doirish until the tachten climbs higher and higher until he realizes, there is an Eibishter and the Eibishter is emes, and he can come to this hakara not milamaylo lamata, not because of a gilui milamaylo, but he can come to it milamata lamayla through bringing rayas from within the bria itself. But according to both ways, the point is that the emphasis within the second mahalach, whether the makabel comes to the hakara mitzad gilui milamayla, or the makabel comes to a hakara milamata lamayla through being mizboinen in inyonei habriya v'chulu. Both ways, the point in the second mahalach is that since the Betachtonim has to demonstrate the amitiyus of elikus, there has to be the kabbalah, there has to be the hakara of the mata. Mashenkin in the first oifen, that it's about the expressing the teikef habligvul of elikus, the emphasis is on the hashpa, and what's doing with the makabel is not important. Now, between these two mahalchim, whether Direi Betachtonim demonstrates the teikef habligvul of elikus, that it's able to be nimshach even betachtonim, or whether Direi Betachtonim demonstrates the amitiyus of elikus through the fact that even a tachten is maskim and makir b'mitosei. The second mahalach is deeper. Second mahalach is higher, and here's why. Let's understand this back to our mashal from the Isha Chesed. When the Isha Chesed does Chesed, the pashtus, why is he doing the Chesed? What's motivating him to do Chesed? What's motivating him is his midas chesed. Because he is a chazdon, because he is a kind person, he has a tainug from doing chesed. So b'meila he wants to do chesed. Meaning, it's not about the makabel. It's not that the makabel is the one drawing out from within him the desire to do chesed. No, it's the midas chesed of the mashpia himself. He has a tainug in doing chesed that's causing him to do chesed. And if he doesn't do the chesed, he's going to have a tsar. Like we find by Avram Avinu, that when Avram Avinu didn't have any guests, couldn't do chesed, he was b'tzar. So when he was finally able to give the chesed, that gave him a tainug. So this is all chesed, the way chesed is mitzad the mashpia. If the focus is on the mashpia, so then it's like we said, the mashpia has a midas chesed that causes him to want to do chesed, and he does chesed. It's not so much about how the makabel accepts the chesed and takes the chesed. But we see that when takel poyel, the makabel ha-chesed is makabel the chesed, and the chesed is good for the makabel, and the makabel internalizes the chesed, and the makabel is changed by the chesed, then we see that this causes another tainug in the mashpia. Meaning, besides for the original tainug that he has, because he's a isha chesed, and he has tainug in doing chesed, in being mashpia chesed, but we see that when the makabel is makabel the chesed, the kabbalah sa chesed is goyrem even a deeper tainug in the isha chesed. He's not only now having tainug from the hashpah sa chesed, but he has a greater tainug from the kabbalah sa chesed, that the kabbalah sa chesed was also successful. Ublashan achsidis, that the shayresh hakelim is higher than the shayresh ha'oir. Meaning the Eibishter has, so to speak, the union of oir, that he wants to be mashpia, that he is mashpia. And that's also has a shayresh lamayla. The Eibishter has tainug from being mashpia. But the shayresh hakelim is even higher than that. Meaning when the tainug that the Eibishter gets from the oir being niskabel, b'pnimius hakelim, when the keli is able to absorb the oir and appreciate the oir, this is goyrem and even higher tainug in the Eibishter. So going back to our two mahalchim, comes out that the second mahalach is higher. In the first mahalach, where the emphasis was on the Eibishter's toikef abligvul, that he's mashpia even betachtonim, so that brings about, so to speak, the tainug within a likus, that a likus has tainug from the hashpah sa chesed, from the hashpah sa oir. The Eibishter is mashpia oir even betachtonim. That's one level. But in the second mahalach, where the emphasis is on the makabel, how the makabel is absorbing the oir, how the tachtonim are maskim and makir in the emeskait of the Eibishter. So now that we have an inyan of kabbalah sa'oir, we have an inyan of kelim, and we're focusing on the fact that the kelim are makabel the oir, this is causing in the Eibishter even a greater tainug, even a higher tainug. It's coming from a higher place than stam hashpoah sa'oir. And this fits very well with the two l'chayra similar sayings, but kadaikis, they're different. There's one saying where we say soif ma'aseh b'machshava tchilo, and there's another saying where we say no tchilosan b'soifa. And this fits in with these two mahalchim. The first mahalach, where we said we're focusing on the hashpoah sa'oir milamayla lamata, for the first mahalach, the toikef abligvul of elikus, that it's able to be nimshach lamato. So this is the idea of no tchilasan b'soifon. That b'soifon, in the end, in the tachten, in the lowest place, that's where you can see the tchila, the toikef of the mashpia. As the lower the mashpia goes, the more safe, or when the mashpia comes to the level of saif, and he's able to reach even that tachtonim, Now you can see tchilas, and you can see the toikef habligvul of what that oir is, that it's able to reach so low. That's not tchilas and b'seifa. But when we speak about the second mahalach, how the mekabel ha'oir is then mekabel and makir umaskim to elikus. So this is the idea of seif ma'ase b'machshava tchila, meaning that in seif ma'ase, which is the Kabbalah Hashpa, here you have machshava tchila. Machshava tchila means what comes even before the machshava. Machshava is the shayrish of the hashpa. Like we said before by the Isha Chesed, that his mashpia Chesed comes from his desire to do Chesed. That's the machshava. Machshava tchila is the shayrish hakelim, which is noch tifer wie the shayrish ha'oir. That's the tainug which the mashpia gets, the second tainug which the mashpia gets from the Kabbalah Chesed, when the Makabel is Makabel Chesed. So that's the pshat, seif ma'ase b'machshava tchila, that the seif ma'ase, the Kabbalah Hashpa, the Kabbalah Ha'oir, that reaches not only tchila, but the machshava tchila. It reaches even before and even higher than the shayrish ha'oir. Okay, that's parenthetic. Okay, nachzalin yoneinu, getting back to the focus here. So we have these two seemingly good explanations into what's the idea behind dir betachtonim, what's the mile in dir betachtonim, what's the purpose of dir betachtonim, and we're good. Here the Rebbe asks his bomb kasha. This is where everything changes. What's the bomb kasha? That we know that the Alter Rebbe said on the Lashon Nis'ave HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Eibishter had a taiva. So the Alter Rebbe said, as if a taiva is ken kasha it, which means that, so to speak, the reason why the Eibishter wanted a dir betachtonim is not something which is based on a reason. Rather, it's a taiva. It's lamayla mitam v'das. It's lamayla mitam v'das. If a taiva is ken kasha it. It's not something which could be justified or rationalized. Dir betachtonim has to be something which the only explanation for it is nis'ave. So l'chayra al pi kol hanal doesn't make sense. Seemingly, dir betachtonim is very logical. Dir betachtonim is very rational. It's not something about which we have to say that this is nis'ave and afatayves ken kashen it. It's very logical. But the fact that the Alter Rebbe said that it's something which is a taiva, and it's lamayla mitam v'das, this means that it has to be the kavon in dir betachtonim has to be something which is completely illogical, something which it's impossible to find any justification or any rationalization. Which means that all that we said before still is not the amitis ha'inyan of dir betachtonim. The very fact that it could be somehow explained and rationalized means it's not dir betachtonim. Dir betachtonim has to be something which is impossible to explain. And the only thing that we can say about it is nis'ave on afatayves ken kashen it. So we basically have to discard all that we said before and somehow explain dir betachtonim in such a way which, so to speak, makes no sense, in a way which we cannot find any maila, any inyan, any purpose in it. So to understand this, let's turn to Tanya Perek Lamed Vav. And there in Tanya, when Alter Rebbe talks about the inyan of dir betachtonim, he says that what does the Eibishter want? What kind of tachtonim does the Eibishter want? He wants tachten she'ein tachten lamata mimenu. That's the lashon of Tanya. Tachten she'ein tachten lamata mimenu. What does this mean? That the Eibishter wants a dira in the lowest possible tachton, and the tachton should be so low that it's not possible to imagine a lower tachton. So it's the lowest possible tachton one can ever think of. Now that has to mean if it's the lowest possible tachton, that has to mean that we're dealing with such a tachton that's hopeless. Because if we're dealing with a tachton that could be nis'ale, could be nisbarer, to eventually become a keli to a likus, then we understand that's not the lowest possible tachton. We can think of an even lower tachton, and that would be a tachton which is impossible to be nisbarer or to be nis'ale. So therefore, when we say tachton she'ein tachton lamata mimenu, that has to mean that the Eibishter wants a dira betachtonim in such a tachton which is a lost case. This tachton is so far gone, it's so low, it's impossible for it to ever become a keli to elikus. It's impossible that elikus should be meir in this tachton, that this tachton will be makir in elikus. It is completely lost. And in the Lashon of Tanya, der Perek Lamed Vav, he says, what kind of tachton are we dealing with? Tachton shein tachton lamata mimenu b'inyan hester oire yizbarach, v'choshech kofel u'mechupal, ad shu moli klipos v'sitra achra shehei neged Hashem mamish, loimer an iva afsiyoid. So it's what he says. The tachton shein tachton lamata mimenu is such a tachton which is moli klipos v'sitra achra. Which moli klipos v'sitra achra means it's so full of klipos that it's not possible for this tachton to ever come around to being a keli telikus. Ad shehu neged Hashem mamish. It's a menaged telikus. This is the lowest possible tachton. What could be lower than this? Once we get to the point where the tachton is so far gone that it can never come back, it can never be a keli to elikus, it's menaged, it's neged Hashem mamish. Okay, so now we understand this is the lowest you can go. There's nothing lower. And this is the tachton which the Eibishter wants to have a dira betachtonim. So the shaila is, so how is this possible? If we're dealing with a tachton, which is molik lipis v'sitra achra, which is neged Hashem mamish, that it's impossible for this tachton to ever become a keli to a likus. There's not shaykh that it should be nisbarer, not shaykh that it should be nis'ale. So how can it become a dira betachtonim? So obviously, the only way this can happen is b'derech ischatshus. B'derech ischatshus. That is going to be some kind of external koyach. And this external koyach is going to have the power, b'derech ischatshus, to somehow change this tachton and turn it into a keli to a likus, turn it into a dira betachtonim. What is this koyach? This koyach is the koyach ha'atzmus. And who has this koyach ha'atzmus? This is the Neshamas Yisrael. And only Neshamas Yisrael, with the koyach ha'atzmus that they have within them, have the power to transform this tachton, b'derech ischatshus, into a dira betachtonim. Just like creation itself, we say it's only hu levade b'koyche v'yacholtei livra yesh mi'ayin v'efes ha'muchlet mamish, that the koyach ha'isavus is dafke from atzmus. Only atzmus has this koyach, so al derech zeh is the inyan of dira betachtonim. The inyan of dira betachtonim, which is to take a tachton, which is ein tachton amata mimenu, which is a menage to a likus, which mitzad inyanoi is a lost cause. Mitzad inyanoi, it's not shaykh to ever be a keli to a likus. It's not shaykh aliyah, it's not shaykh birur, nothing is shaykh. So to take such a tachton and nevertheless, b'derech ischatshus, make it a dira betachtonim, this is only b'koyach ha'atzmus. And this, again, this koyach is possessed by the Yidden, and they, b'derech ischatshus, will make a dira betachtonim. And the fizeh kumtzu noch an Oimek in one of the nekudas that we say about dira betachtonim. Generally, we say that in dira betachtonim there are two key factors. Number one, that the Eibishter wants a dira latzmusai. The Eibishter wants to be dor betachtonim b'chol atzmusai, not just higher madregas of oir, but he wants to be dor b'chol atzmusai, and also that it should be begilah. So in this first nekuda, that the Eibishter wants to be dor betachtonim b'chol atzmusai, it's a dira latzmusai mamash, not just a lower madregas. Now we understand a whole new Oimek in this. It's not only a technicality. It's not just that the Eibishter wants to be dor b'chol atzmusai. The Eibishter wants to be Dor, not just on the level of Oyer, in the level of Giluyim, but he wants to be Dor on the level of Atzmus. It's not a technicality. It's the only possibility. Because again, since we're dealing with a Tachton, which is completely lost, it's Molik Klipis V'Sitra Achra, it's Neged Hashem Mamish, it can never be Nis'ale, it can never be Nisbarer. So mitzad any madreges of Giluyim, mitzad any madreges of Oyer, they can't reach that. There's no way for them to ever penetrate, permeate that kind of Tachton. They can never be meir in that kind of a Tachton. So a dira for any madrega of Oyer is pashat not shaykh in this Tachtonim. The only part of Elikus which could be Dor Betachtonim is Atzmus. Only Atzmus, which is Kol Yochel, V'noise HaFachim, which has no Gedorim and is L'mayla Mikol, L'mayla Mi everything. Only Atzmus can be Dor in such a Tachton which is Neged Havaya Mamish, Molek Klipis V'Sitra Achra. So it's not just a technicality that the Eibishter wants to be Dor Betachtonim B'chol Atzmusay. The only part of Elikus which could be Dor Betachtonim is Atzmusay. Any lower Dargi in Elikus wouldn't be possible for that to be Dor Betachtonim because we're dealing with a Tachton which is Molek Klipis V'Sitra Achra, Neged Hashem Mamish, which is a lost case and can never be a Keli to Elikus. So that's what the dir is Dafke Betachtonim. The dir is Dafke Atzmusay. So now we understand why this idea of dir betachtonim is not something which you can give any reason for. We asked before, the Chayra, we can find justifications for dir betachtonim. Why did Alter Rebbe say that it's begeder nisave or nafatayves ken kashanet? So now we understand. If we're dealing with a tachton that you could be mevarer, if we're dealing with a tachton that could be nisale, that could become a keli to elikus, then in achanami. We would understand that there's an inyan in dir betachtonim. There's a mile in dir betachtonim. Something is being achieved. And we wouldn't have to say that it's nisave. Afatayves can kashan it. But now that we understand that we're dealing with a tachton that is ein tachton namata mimenu, so low that it cannot mitzad inyan, he cannot ever be a keli to elikus. The only way to make it dir betachtonim is using the koyach ha'atzmus, which is noise ha'kol, noise ha'fachim, kol yochel. And then, even that, we have to be poil in the Tachton b'derech ischadshus, so we understand that now we're dealing with something which has no place whatsoever in seichel, in logic. What's the point? What's the point of taking something which is mitzad inyonei completely lost? It's not shaykh to be a keli to elikus, not shaykh to be a dir b'tachtonim. And the only way that you can make him a dir b'tachtonim is utilizing the koyach ha'atzmus, which is kol yachal. There's absolutely nothing achieved here. There's no mila, there's no inyan which is achieved. You didn't show how elikus can reach the lowest place. You showed how because we're dealing with such a place that elikus cannot reach. And the only way to make a difference is b'derech ischadshus. You have to completely change it. That's to be a chidush. Al derech briya yesh meyayin. So if you're al derech sort of creating a new metzias, if the old tachtonim is not what's being made into a dir b'tachtonim, instead, we're b'derech ischadshus creating a new metzias. We're breaking the old metzias and creating sort of a new metzias. It's a whole new transformation. So, what did you show? You didn't show anything. You didn't show how a tachton could become a keli to elikus. You just showed how there was a tachton which was a lost cause. So, b'derech ischadshus, we had to transform it and make something which is a dir b'tachtonim. So, b'meila it's understood why such a dir b'tachtonim we can offer no reason or justification for it. There's no point to it. It doesn't make any sense. It seems like a complete waste of time, a complete silliness. The Eibishter wants to be Dor B'tachtonim, but the Tachten he can't be Dor in unless he himself with his koyach transforms it into something that he could be Dor in. So it's just circular logic. It's just going nowhere. Nor v'den is ave. When afatayvas can kashin it. But we can't end over here because we still have to develop this a little bit more. L'chayra, the way we're saying it now, it's not enough. It's time to say that the Yidin b'koyach ha'atzmus u'b'derech ischadshus are going to make a dir b'tachtonim, and it's not at all mitzad the tacht in itself. It's kol kulei coming from the outside, b'derech ischachus, it's still lacking. L'chayra sof kol sof, no matter what we say, the union of dir betachtonim has to be coming mitzad tachtonim. Has to be coming mitzad tachtonim. If tachtonim themselves are completely lost, and it takes something from the outside, b'derech ischachus, to make a dir betachtonim, it's not betachtonim. It's not mitzad tachtonim. So how in this explanation that we gave, where do we see the fact that despite the fact that it's coming b'kayach ha'atzmus, through neshamas Yisrael, and b'derech ischachus, that still it's mitzad tachtonim? So here the explanation is as follows, and this I think is the most amazing part of this whole hezbollah, the chidush ha'ilal kulanu. When we think about Achdus Hashem, so usually we understand what's about Achdus Hashem, that everything is bottled elikus. That even though things may appear to be a yesh, and things may feel to be a yesh, but be'emes, einoid mulvadei altes elikus. Altes elikus. Everything is bottled betachlis abitul. This is b'pashtus how we understand Achdus Hashem. But maybe we can suggest something a little bit deeper. This explanation of Achdus Hashem, that everything is bottle, that everything is elikus, is only Achdus Hashem on the darge of Oir. Mitzad Giluyim. Mitzad Giluyim, in what is expressed, the inyan of Achdus Hashem, as altes elikus. Einoid milvad. There's nothing else. However, mitzad atzmusa yizborech, mitzad atzmus, we can say something even deeper. Here we can say that Achdus Hashem includes and operates even on the level where there is a yesh. And the yesh is margish itself as a yesh mamish emetziyusay miatzmusay. It doesn't feel any bittul. It's mamish a grobe yesh. And that is still included and within the inyan of Achdus Hashem. Because we know that, it says in Chassidus in many places, the hergish of mitziyusay miatzmusay, which is in the yesh hanivra, comes from the yesh hamiti. Since, as we said, only Yatzmusay Mehusay She'enli Ila V'Siba Kedemesloi B'Koiche V'Yecholtoi Livra Yesh Meyayin. So since the Yesh HaNivra derives directly from the Yesh HaAmiti, so just like the Yesh HaAmiti is Be'emes Mitziyusay Miatzmusay Enli Ila V'Siba Kedemesloi, so the Yesh HaNivra, which comes from the Yesh HaAmiti, likewise has this hergish of Mitziyusay miatzmusay, as if ein le'ila v'siba kedemesloi. It's margish itself as a yesh. So therefore it comes out that on the level of atzmus, the Achdus Hashem doesn't require that everything be bottle. Doesn't require that everything be ayin ve'efes. No, we can say that even in that level, even in that place, where the Yesh HaNivra is margish, Shemitziyusay miatzmusay, the Yesh HaNivra is a grobe yesh, he doesn't feel any bittul, he doesn't feel a likus. He only feels zichalein. That in itself is a direct result from the Yesh HaAmiti. It's an expression of the Yesh HaAmiti. So we see a likus not just in the bittul, but in the Yeshes Mamish we see Elikus. The Yeshes itself is Elikus. It's a whole different word. Achdus Hashem on the darg of Oir is the pshat. Oir requires everything to be bottle. Everything to feel Elikus. Everything to be Elikus. There's no room for a Yesh. That's mitzad Gilui. But mitzad Atzmus, was Atzmus Mont, is not bittul. Atzmus is noisei that even the yeshes of Metzias, and it's a real yeshes, he didn't change it. It's a geblieben yesh, un a grobe yesh. Even that is not a stira to atzmus. It's not a stira to elikus. Ha guf is mitzad elikus. Mitzad the yesho amiti, which is the emes mitziyusam yatzmusay, that is expressing itself in the fact that the nivra which comes from him is margish mitziyusam yatzmusay. So now let's take this back to Dir Betachtonim. If we're dealing with Dir Betachtonim on a madrega of Giluyim, so what would Dir Betachtonim mean, B'tzad Giluyim? That the Tachtonim should become bottle. Tachtonim should become a keli to Elikus. Tachtonim should be meir in Tachtonim, then you know Achtus Hashem. That would mean that the Tachtonim become ois metzias, they become ois yesh, they become this batter, they become this battle, and Elikus is meir in them. So that's Dir Betachtonim on the darga of Giluyim, and we understand that that's only shayich in a tachton which could become a keli to Elikus. A tachton which could become bottle to Elikus, in there is shayich Dir Betachtonim. But once we reach the tachton, shein tachton lamata mimenu, which is not shayich for that tachton to ever become ois yesh, it's molik klipis v'sitra achro, it's neged Hashem mamish, it can never be a keli to Elikus. So mitzad Giluyim, it's completely lost. The union of Achdus Hashem can never include that. That mitzias can never become bottle, but maybe it can't be a Dir Betachtonim. But on the level of Atzmus, the Dir Betachtonim can happen even in that place, even in that tachton, which is margish mitziyusam yatzmusay, and will always be margish mitziyusam yatzmusay. It will never become this battle. It will never become this barer. It will never be a keli to Elikus. Evet bleiben b'yeshusay u'mitziyusay lo netzach. Nevertheless, Atzmus could be nizgala in that, because it could be nizgala that ha gufa, the yeshus of Welt, the grobe yeshus of Welt, the mitziyusam yatzmusay, which is stuck in that mitziyusam yatzmusay forever. It can't even climb out of that. That in itself isn't a stira to Elikus. When Atzmus is revealed, b'koyach ha'atzmus is ken izgale werden, that in itself is a bitoy of the mitziyusam yatzmusay of the yesha amiti. And lahor, just to be moisef a little bit Oimik in here, this word that the yesh hanivra has a direct correlation to the yesha amiti, and the mitziyusam yatzmusay of the yesha nivra comes from the mitziyusam yatzmusay of the yesha amiti, now takes on a whole new Oimik. Pashtus we learn simple. There's a yesha nivra is margish mitziyusam yatzmusay, and that comes from the yesha amiti. According to what we're saying now, that what kind of yesha nivra are we talking about? What kind of tachton are we talking about? A tachton that it's not shayich for him to ever become this barer on his ale on his battle. So it comes out that the mitziyusam yatzmusay of the yesh hanivra is behechlet. It's not a temporary state. We're talking about a yesh hanivri which is muchrach forever. Evet almol bleiben in this matziv of mitziyusam yatzmusay. It's a yeshus which it's stuck in that yeshus. Yeshus behechlet. And that comes from the yesha amiti. And it's perfect, because the yesha amiti is mitziyusam yatzmusay. Be'emes, lo netzach, mechuyev, muchrach azay, behechlet azay. So what kind of yesh hanivra comes from the yesha amiti? The yesh hanivra which comes from the yesha amiti is not a yesh hanivra which is temporarily margish mitziyusam yatzmusay, but could eventually climb out of it and become bottled. Just like the yesha amiti can't climb out of his being mitziyusam yatzmusay. So al derech the yesh hanivra which comes from the yesha amiti is such a yesh hanivra that he can never climb out of his being mitziyusam yatzmusay. He can't climb out of his hargoshas atzmai. He will never become this battle. He will never feel his mocker. He will always remain a yesh that doesn't feel the mocker, that feels mitziyusam yatzmusay. Just like Atmus is that way. Behechlet. And yet we can see the union of Dir Betachtonim because mitzad Atmus, that yeshus itself not will become this battle, not will become this barer, that yeshus itself can be seen as sort of being a keli to Atmus. or can be seen as being a bitoy of atzmus. That yeshus is the gilui ha'atzmus. So this is a little bit moisif Oimek in this word, that dir betachtonim is only latzmusay. It's not shaykh that dir betachtonim should be for the dargas of giluyim. Giluyim can never reach this tachten. Giluyim monen bittel. Giluyim monen ois metzias. But a tachten which is always going to be stuck by mitziyusay, giluyim can never reach. Dafke, the dir is latzmusay, dafke mitzad atzmus, shaykh, sort of this inyan of neise hofchim. Both sides. That mitzad echad, it's a grubba yesh, and it will always be a grubba yesh. It's not being this battle. It's not being this bara. And mitzad sheni, that gufa is atzmus. Das allein is atzmus. So this is how the inyan of dir betachtonim is also mitzad tachtonim. That says from within the gedorim of tachtonim, within the gedorim of the yesh hanivra, that he is moli klippus v'sitra achra, and he's a yesh mamish, and he's margish mitziyusam yatzmusay. From within that, we come to the inyan of dir betachtonim by understanding that this gufa is a bitoy of atzmus. This gufa is atzmus. But we understand at the same time that this is not the pshat that the tachtonim mitzad inyonim can ever reach this. Because tachtonim mitzad inyonim are a yesh, and they'll always be a yesh, they mitzad their inyan can never climb out and see that our yeshes, it's mitzad the yesh amiti. It's not something which comes mitzad the tachtonim. It's always going to come ilamayla. It's always going to be coming mitzad atzmus, as we said before. The neshamas yisrael b'koyach atzmus b'derech hischachus. What's the hischachus? The hischachus is that they're going to be able to instill within the nivroim, within the yesha nivro, instill this inyan that your yeshus gufa is elikus, your yeshus gufa is atzmus. So this is a whole new ischachus. It's not something which the yesh hanivra mitzad atzma is shaykh to. The yesh hanivra mitzad atzma is only a yesh. But the neshamas yisrael b'koyach atzmus, they can mechadish sein within the yesh hanivra. This understanding, this feeling that the yeshus itself is atzmus. The yeshus itself is atzmus. But when they do that, we understand it's not completely mibachutz. At the same time, it's also, now we can see how it's mitzad the tachten itself. Okay, we were mayrich. Hopefully the inyanim at the end are inyanim dakim. Hopefully the inyan is klar, and somehow we're going to walk away with a bigger appreciation of the inyan of the Behemshach to the Shiur. In the inyan of dir betachtonim, I just wanted to go back to one of the nekudas that we discussed, and maybe sharpen it a little bit more, make the point a little bit more clear. And that's the word that the yesh hanivra is a bitoy of the yesh amiti. And we explained that in was besteht the yeshus of the yesh hanivra is yeshus of mitziyusam yatzmusay, that it's besteht in such a yeshus that it's tachten shein tachten lamata mimenu. It's not shaykh to be in his battle or in his battle. So, to put it in other words, we can say like this, that just like the Yesha Amiti, his mechoyev hametzias, his metziyusay miatzmusay, is ba'ofen chiyuvi, ba'ofen muchlati, ba'ofen atzmi. Or in other words, his metziyusay miatzmusay betachlis be'ili achar ili ad ein sof in the inyan of metziyusay miatzmusay. His being metziyusay miatzmusay she'ein le'ila v'siba kedemes lei, that is an inyan in him which is so strong, it's bligvul strong. He's bligvul in the inyan of metziyusay miatzmusay. He's muchlut to mechuyev in oifen atzmi ba'aliyas ad ein ketz in the inyan of metziyusay miatzmusay. And therefore this inyan translates to the yesh hanivra as well. Because the yesh hanivra comes from the Yesh HaAmiti, so therefore the Yeshus of the Yesh HaNivra is also in such a way, that the Yesh HaNivra is Margish Metziusa Miatzmusay, and he's a Yesh B'yerida Acha Yerida Ad Ein Ketz. Bli Gvul in the Inyan of Metziusa Miatzmusay. It's the Hargoshas, the Yeshus, the Hargoshas Metziusa Miatzmusay of the Yesh HaNivra is Bli Gvul. Ba'ofen Muchlati, Ba'ofen Chiyuvi, Ba'ofen Atzmi. Which is why it's a Tachten Shein Tachten Lamata Mimenu. That's mamash the pirush of the Werte. Tachten Shein Tachten Lamata Mimenu means that it's Ad Ein Sof. It's Tachten, Achar Tachten, Achar Tachten, Achar Tachten, Ad Ein Sof. Bli Gvul Yeridus in the Inyan of Tachton, in the Inyan of Yeshus. So the Yeshus of the Yesh HaNivra is Ad Kedei Kach Shein Tachten Lamata Mimenu, B'yerida Achar Yerida in the Inyan of Yeshus, of Metziusa Miatzmusay, because it comes from the Yesh HaAmiti, which is Metziusa Miatzmusay, Mechoiv HaMetzi, is Be'ilui Achar Ilui Ad Ein Ketz. He's Bli Gvul in the Inyan of Metziusa Miatzmusay. Okay. And Lefiza comes out the Inyan Nifla. That in a sense, the lower the Yesh HaNivra goes in his Tachtonius, Mitzad Echad, it's moving further and further away from Elikus, but Mitzad Sheni, it's moving closer. According to the end Vort, that the Yeshus of the Yesh HaNivra is Atzmus, Nemtzach von Atzmus, from the Yesh HaAmiti. So the more low the Yesh HaNivra goes, the more it's expressed the Tachten Shein Tachten Lamata Mimenu, that his Argoshas Metziusa Miatzmusay is B'yerida Acha Yerida Ad Ein Ketz. He's Bli Gvul in the Inyan of Metziusa Miatzmusay in his Yeshus. The more it's Mevate in the Tzad HaToiv, in the Tzad HaKedusha, on Elikus, on Atzmus, his Metziusa Miatzmusay Be'ilui Achar Ilui Ad Ein Ketz. Ba'ofen Muchlati, Ba'ofen Chiyuvi, Ba'ofen Atzmi. That's one Heisafa that I wanted to say. The other one is just to clarify that according to this end Vort, Dir Betachtonim is not pshat. It's not a birur in the Tachten. It's not an ali in the Tachten. Since we're dealing with the Tachten, that's ein Tachten lamata mimenu. That's margish mitziusa miatzmusay, as we just said now. Lamata b'yerida acha yerida ad ein ketz. So even after the inyan of dir betachtonim, that's not lost. Even when the Tachten even when the dir betachtonim is actually happening, it's not pshat that the Tachten lost its tachtonius. It's not pshat that the Tachten is no longer margish mitziusa miatzmusay. It's still a Tachten betachlis. What we're going to have is an inyan of noisa hafachim. That mitzad echad, it's take a Tachten shein Tachten lamata mimenu, it's take a yesh atzum. But at the same time, in the way of noisa hafachim, that in itself is directly a bitui of atzmus. And therefore that ability does not come from within the yesh hanivra itself to be able to be noisa hafachim. It comes from the kayach atzmus, which you didn't have, to be able to instill that within the nivra. So it's still going to be b'derech ischachus, because to be poil within a nivra that it should be noisa hafachim is a chidush. Both in ischachus legamri, it's not something which is shaykh to the nivra mitzad atzmai. But at the same time, once it's done, once the inyan is nifal, once the dir betachtonim is nifal, it's realized, then we can see that it's not kol kulei mitzad zayte kezach, but it is connected to and coming from within the Tachten itself.